Okay, with our last little bit, let's go over the engagement norm. So, the one benefit of this being the beginning of the year, it's a great chance to really set the tone with the students as far as, look, these are the engagement norms. And that's the first step in implementation is training your students with these engagement norms. And you yourself, the better trained the students are, the more it'll facilitate your delivery. And I always use the example that I always come around this time of the year to Australia because there's a lot of schools want professional developments those first 2 weeks of school being back. And the problem is I like to do lesson demonstrations, and if it's the first week of school, the students aren't trained yet, and it takes a couple weeks to train your student. And I was in WA and I'd worked with a school for a year and they wanted me to return, and a year one teacher, they really wanted to see a lesson demonstration in a year one class. And this was literally the first week of school. And I was going to be doing it on the third day the students were back. And I talked to the principal and the teachers. I'm like, it's not going to work. The students need to be trained in the engagement norm, and early childhood takes time. And the teacher, oh, I'll never forget this teacher. She's just a really fabulous teacher and just really inspiring to me personally. And she's like, look, Joe, I've had this class. I had them when they were foundation students, and I worked really hard with them in foundation. And a lot of them are returning. Now I'm in year one and I get to have the same students, almost the same group again. And I'm going to really try to have them ready. And, I just put my disclaimer out there. I'm like, well, I can't promise you anything. Here's what we come across. If the students are trained, the lesson doesn't flow because, I can't show them what track with me, read with me. I only have so much attention span and all the variables that can happen. Like, well, I'll do what I can. And, it was about, how the class was set up, how to use whiteboards, how to park their whiteboards, how to talk in, there's a lot of things. Do they know their pair share partners, all the things that the engagement norms you require your students to understand and to do. And so I'm like, well, I'll give it a go. I show up, it's the third day back for these year ones. So basically the year ones are technically still foundation age. They go back a couple months, so they're starting all over again. And the students are all on the carpet and they're all sitting very nicely on the carpet. I'm like, well, that's a good sign. At least they're sitting down nicely. And then I noticed, uh-oh, the students don't have their whiteboards. Now, anytime you have to have things prepared. So if I have to get up and get the students to get their whiteboards and their whiteboard markers, it's kind of a distraction a little bit. But they're literally row 1, row 2, row 3, row 4. 4 rows of students, about 5 students per row, 5 or 4 students. So I look at the teacher, I'm like, oh, they're gonna need their whiteboards. And I'm like, here we go, it's gonna be a fiasco. And this teacher, she's like, oh, no problem. Okay, class, are we ready? And she does this. The first row students stand up, they go around to the back of the room, pick up their whiteboards and their whiteboard markers, come back, sit down. Second row of students stand up, go around to the back of the room, pick up their whiteboards and whiteboard markers, come back, sit down. Third row stand up, come back, go around the room, get up their whiteboards and whiteboard markers, sit down, and then the last row. This was on day 3 and my jaw dropped. I had never seen that. I'm like, how did you do that? And, she's like, look, Joe, I just put a lot of time. I see how these strategies work. It helps me support my students' learner. So I'm reinforcing them all the time. And with my, kindergarten students, I was always going over why we do them and how we do them. And, she was a very effective teacher, very nurturing. She had a great relationship and the kids had buy-in. You could tell they loved their teacher and vice versa. And, that's what it took to train them. I'd never seen that and I don't expect many people, but, it was really impressive the way she did that. So track with me, read with me. It'll look different for early childhood as opposed to upper grades. And the reason, because you might have to decode a little bit more. For example, it would look something like this. If these are foundation age students, I might do a few sentences at a time. Track with me, read with me. Everyone, track with me, read with me. All right, you're my foundation students. Okay, foundation students, get your tracking pointer fingers out. Everyone, get your pointer fingers out. Okay, now we're going to practice this. We will identify, your turn. We will identify characters, your turn, characters in a story. Your turn, in a story. That's how you read all those words in a learning objective. Let's put that whole sentence together. My turn, we will identify characters in a story. Your turn, we will identify characters in a story. A partner, read to B partner. What are we doing today? We will identify characters in a story. B partner, read to A partner. What are we doing today? We will identify characters in a story. Be careful. Don't have your students read to the ceiling or read to the wall or read. They need to read to the words. They're making associations. These are high frequency words, we, in, a, with new words that they, every time they see them, they're making associations. That's how you read and pronounce them. Okay? So that's kind of what track with me, read with me looks like. But I can't track with me, read with me everything in a foundation year. So some things I'm going to read out loud because I'm going to cognitively overload my students. So I'll just say, which picture is a person? Is it this? Is it picture A with the camera? Picture B? Why? Why is it picture B? And you know, they'll choose B. Why is that a picture of person? I don't know, because my brain tells me, because my head. No, is it a picture of a person because it has eyes, mouth, and a face, or because it's just an object like a camera? Train them to justify. Which picture is an animal? Obviously, technically, both of them are, but is it a picture of an animal because they have 4 legs and you know, funny ears? Or, you know, so you teach them to justify. I'll track with me the definitions. Then I'll just read out loud and have the students read after me the story, as you saw earlier. Now, if I'm doing older kids, it looks a little bit different. My turn, class. We will determine or figure out the unit fraction of a whole. Your turn. We will determine the unit fraction of a whole. A partner, read to B partner. What are we doing? We will determine the unit fraction of a whole. B partner, read to A partner. What are we doing? We will determine the unit fraction of a whole. Then I'd go here. My activating prior knowledge, because it's written at grade level, we're going to solve the problems. I'm not going to track with me, read with me. I'm making a decision because I can't make it too robotic. Let's read this together, everyone. How you would split a whole pie into 2 equal parts that 2 people get the same amount. You know what? I'll do number 1. We always have our problems in math in pairs because the teacher models the first one, so the students can do the second one successfully. Number 1, I know I have a whole pie, and if I have to do it in 2 equal parts, I've got to divide this somewhere. So I could do it this way. Everyone get a whiteboard out. I'm going to draw a circle on your whiteboard. Okay, now that is in 2 equal parts. If I look at that pie, that side, that piece is as equal to the other one. Now I could share it equally. Let's read number 2. How you would split a whole pie into 4 equal parts so 4 people get the same amount. Talk to your partners on your whiteboards. Draw a circle that represents a pie and split it into 4 equal parts. Go ahead. Very good. It's a circle. Thank you, Sonia. Beautiful. I could see that you mimed the answer there. Sonia, Jess, and Jess said you were miming the answer. They're showing me the answer. Yep, beautiful. There you go. So yeah, it's just a quick. So I'm making decisions. Would I track with me, read with me? Here, I'm going to do the definitions. A unit fraction represents or shows one equal part of a whole. Read with me. A unit fraction represents one equal part of a whole. Now, this is important. You need to read when you track with me at the pace that your learners read at. So third grade students read, you have to read at their pace. You can't read, a unit fraction represents one equal part of a whole. Track with me. That's reading way beyond how they can read, so they can't track with you. You need to read the way they would read it. A unit fraction represents one equal part of a whole, but you got to read it with enough prosody where you can get comprehension. Okay, so sometimes we read too quickly because we're strong readers ourselves. We have to read at the pace that our learners read at, so they can track with you. Okay. So that's track with me, read with me. I explained to my students we're promoting reading fluency. Because without reading fluency, you can't get comprehension. First comes fluency, then comes comprehension. For example, if a student couldn't decode this sentence, student engagement is created when the teacher, you'll never get comprehension. You have to have fluency. Student engagement is created when the teacher asks the students to do something. Now you can get comprehension. Oh, student engagement is when the students are doing something like reading with you or gesturing or pair sharing or using whiteboards. That's where you get comprehension. So you need fluency before you get comprehension. So what I want you to do right now is with your groups, I want someone else to be the teacher. Look at your lesson, and I want you to get into your lesson, and I want someone to be the teacher who tracks with me, reads with me, and then has the other teachers read with them. So just so you can practice. Believe it or not, what I get is this looks intuitively easy almost, and it looks like, well, we do this all the time. Well, you'd be surprised. It's deceptively easy sometimes. Sometimes you're relearning how to do these, and you're almost, as a teacher, you're on cognitive overload until you've internalized these strategies. They have to become automatic. Can I ask a quick question? Has anyone tried the engagement norms in their classrooms already? Can anyone raise their hand if they've tried the engagement norms? Is it Amelia? Anyone? We've got a few teachers who've tried it. Well, usually in the beginning, you're like teaching in molasses. You're stuck because do I track with me, read with me here? Do I pair share? You haven't internalized the strategy. So there is a little bit of a learning curve to internalize these strategies. That's why we practice doing this. So with your colleagues, I want you to get your lesson and track with me, read with me a passage in there to them. Go ahead. Okay, now I want to ask a question. Why do we pronounce with me, track with me, and read with me? Why do we do it, and how do we do it as a teacher? Go ahead and talk with each other. Why do we pronounce with me, track with me, and read with me, and how do we do it? What are we pronouncing? What words are we pronouncing? What sentences are we track with me, read with me? Okay, and why? Go ahead and talk with each other, pair share. All right, who can answer what is pronounced with me and why do we do it? Track with me and read with me. How and why do we do it? Let's do Courtney, Mel, Denise, and Amelia. Can someone from there share why we pronounce with me and track with me, read with me?
Well, we talked about how it's engaging for students. So if they're doing it along with you, then they're going to be more engaged in the lesson. And it's just reinforcing those skills that you're trying to get them to learn, I guess.
Yeah, anytime you ask them to do something as opposed to just sitting there, that's a type of engagement.
Yeah.
Reading out loud, and also it's really supporting their reading. We want to support their reading and reading fluency as much as we can. This is one way we do it. Okay. Next, we have gesture with me. Who can give me a year 4, year 5 definition of a prefix? Raise your hand. Don't pair share, no cheating, no talking to each other, no practicing. Who can give me the definition of a prefix? Just raise your hand. Don't say it out loud. Come on. This is primary school, and okay, we've got one person out of 45 teachers who can. A few of you might be a little nervous. I'm not going to test you or call on you. Who can, okay, who can give me a definition of a prefix? Okay. You probably all know it. This is about 3 out of 45 teachers. You probably could come up with a definition, but if you haven't taught it in a while, it might be a little tricky. Okay. This is why it's so important to teach first in EDI. Okay. And this is the power of a gesture. If I have 3 out of 45 students who raise their hand, it's not enough traction. That's just not good enough as my teaching. That's why I teach first. But here's a definition of a prefix. A prefix is a letter or letters in front of a word that changes its meaning. Can everyone do that with me? Ready? 1, 2, 3. A prefix is a letter or letters in front of a word that changes its meaning. Make sure you're saying the definition out loud. That's the key. You have to say it as well. A prefix is a letter or letters in front of a word that changes its meaning. Teach each other what a prefix is. Show them that gesture and say the definition to them. A prefix is a letter or letter in front of a word that changes meaning. Go ahead, teach them what the prefix is, sharing this with each other. We've got dance moves going on over there with the Sarah, Vicky, and Sue group. We're gonna see what they're up to over there. All right. Okay. Now, if I've taught it first, now I can randomly select my students, and now that I've taught it first, I should have much more success. So window 3, that's Kaylee, Katie, Laura, Kim, Linda. Can one of you tell me what a prefix is?
A prefix is a letter or letters that go before a word that changes the meaning of the word.
Very nicely synchronized. Do you guys look like you practice that? Very nicely done. Who else can tell me what a prefix is? Window 10. Can I get the Courtney, Mel, Denise, Amelia square to tell me what a prefix is?
It's a letter or letters that come before or in front of a word that changes its meaning.
Very good. That's 2 students in a row. When I had only 2 out of 45 students who could raise their hand, I guarantee you if I asked another square, you would be able to tell me a prefix. Now the key is, now that I explained the definition to you, now I would give you an example of it. Okay, redo, refund. Okay, those are prefix. Re is a prefix. Retest. Okay, re is a prefix because it's a letter or letters in front of the word that changes its meaning. For example, test is a word. Re means to do again. If I put it in front of test, it makes test to test again. Redo, I put re in front of do, it means to do again. Now here's a non-example. Read, R-E-A-D. If I have R-E in front of A-D, that's not a word by itself. So it doesn't change its meaning, so it's not a prefix. Now I've given examples. Now I go, which one is an example of a prefix over here? How do you know? That's kind of the EDI loop, and that's the power of a gesture. Now gestures, you don't think that you have to come up with a gesture for every single lesson that you have. In fact, I only have gestures for maybe 40% of my lessons. Actually, for early childhood, it's probably 40 to 50% of my lessons I can come up with a gesture. Once I get to 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, maybe it's 30% of my lessons. When I get to middle school and high school, maybe 10 or 20% of my lessons. You know, you just can't come up with gestures. Gestures take time to come up with, because a gesture has to be simple. Okay, it can't be more difficult than the actual definition. Okay, that, you know, the gesture has to be practiced and rehearsed by the students, and also the gesture has to be repeated through the lessons and attached to the definition, connected to the definition, and connected to the example. Okay, you know, and by the way, I've had teachers, you know, one time I was working with a teacher coaching them, and they made a gesture that was so difficult. It was really interesting. It was like she was doing main idea and supporting details. And she's, you know, I'm working with her coaching. It's like, okay, class, the main idea of a text is the main idea of the whole text, and you have supporting details that go to the main idea. And I mean, I literally was like, I thought she was trying to land a plane on an aircraft carrier. It was, you know, just one of these things. And the gesture was more difficult and the main idea with the supporting details, when you read the text, they go and support the details of the main idea. And then she turns and she looks at me and she winks. She's like, huh? She gave me the wink, and I'm like, all right, wow, this is going to be a tough compliment sandwich today. It's like, you know, no, the gesture was more difficult than the actual definition. It's got to be sweet and connected to the example. Now, gestures, they're hard to come up with. So we call it collective efficacy. Talk to colleagues, talk to, you know, the reason I have so many gestures is because I've been in so many classrooms and I've borrowed so many teachers' gestures. You know, I've seen so many gestures. I've borrowed gestures from so many of the classrooms I visited, and I took people's gestures, and I've actually written a book on gestures, and I've copyrighted, and I now sell it on our website. So if you want a book on, no, I'm just kidding. I haven't, but that's how I learned these gestures, is by getting them and you know, talking to other teachers about it, and it's connecting it to the definition and example. Here's an example of a couple gestures. You saw it. What's a character? Okay, look, I won't even go back to the story. Everyone tell me, what is a character? Foundation level definition. Everyone? It's a person, it's an animal, or thing in a story. What do characters do? They talk or do something. Kinesthetic activity that helps you learn more. If I can't come up with a gesture, I'm thinking of any cognitive strategy to help my learner remember more. Here, I can't come up with a gesture. A unit fraction represents or shows one equal part of a whole. Read with me. A unit fraction represents one equal part of a whole. Look, instead of coming up with a gesture, the numerator is always 1. Class numerator. How do I remember? The numerator is the numerator, whoops. The numerator, I underline u because the numerator is what? Always the up number. It's the number above. It's up. So I underline u in numerator for up. The denominator, I underline or circle d. Why? Because it's always the down number. That's not a gesture technically, but it's still a mnemonic device to help teach students learn more. Okay, so talk to each other. How do we use a gesture? And let me give you one more example, because this is a really important concept, and I like to share this one with people so you can use it when you teach this. Watch how I connect the gesture to the definition and to the example. My turn, class. Context clues can be nearby words or pictures that help determine the meaning of words. Read with me. Context clues can be nearby words or pictures that help determine the meaning of words. You know how I'm going to remember that? I have an unknown word. Everyone show me their unknown word. Show me. Context clues are the nearby words because it's nearby that unknown word, or pictures that help determine the meaning of the unknown word. Context clues are the nearby words that help determine the meaning of the unknown word. Definition. Now examples. Here's how I'm going to remember it. Let's read this together. There's an exclamation mark. Marcos had been running hard in soccer practice. He was exhausted. Exhausted, that's my unknown word. Marcos had been running hard in soccer practice. When I'm running hard, those are nearby words. They're context clues. I get tired. Exhausted means tired. Okay, then I go to a higher order question. All right, in fact, it would look something like this. Which words in the sentence are context clues that help determine achievement means success? Be ready to explain. Is it he celebrated his greatest achievement with all? Which ones are the context clues in this sentence? He celebrated his greatest achievement with all his friends. I know achievement means success. What would be the context clues? Would it be A, with all his friends? Or would it be B, he celebrated his greatest? So Karen, John, Les, Anna. On your whiteboard, show me A or B, which is an example for context clues. I can't see that. Can you put it a little closer? I want to show an example of differentiation. All right, fair enough, John. Very nice. I'm going to show you an example of differentiation. John, you're going to be my high-performing student because you showed me the answer right away. Okay, so John showed me B. Who's Karen? Who's next to you, John?
That's Anna.
Anna, you also have B. You're a middle-performing student. You know that it's a context clue. He celebrated his greatest because when you celebrate something great, you're usually doing that for an accomplishment, something you're proud of. That's why an achievement must be something that's a success. That's why it's something good. John, you're my high-performing student. You also know that's why those are the context clues, but you also know why it's not A. It's not A because with all his friends, that's not enough information. With all his friends, what is he doing? Are they eating? Are they playing sports? So you can do error analysis. That's how I'm going to extend you as my high-performing student. And who's next to Anna? To your left, Anna? Who's that?
Yeah. Karen.
I'm sorry?
Karen.
Karen. And Karen, you have a misconception. You have A. So show me your whiteboards. Karen has A, Anna and John have B. Okay? I know Karen has a misconception. I'm not going to call on her first. John is my high-performing student. I don't even want to call on him first because he's not gauging my class. I'm going to middle like Anna. So I go to Anna. Anna, I saw that you put B. Why is that an example of a context clue? When you answer, can you say it's an example of a context clue because? Go ahead.
Context clue.
Because it is an example of the.
Context clue.
I can't see it.
He celebrated his greatest.
He celebrated his greatest.
Mm-hmm. Why would that be a context clue that lets me know achievement means success? Is it because when you celebrate something great, it's an accomplishment? It's a goal you've met? Or is it just an everyday event?
It's something good.
It's something good, so an achievement means success. John, I also saw that you put B. Okay, but why wouldn't it be A? Why is A not an example of a context clue?
A is not an example of a context clue because I could be doing anything with all my friends.
It's not giving me information on achievement. And then I can go to my Karen. Karen, would you like to change your answer? Okay, see how with one question I can differentiate 3 levels of students. And Karen might say, well, you know what, Mr. Y, I see what you mean, celebrating something great, but Mr. Y, isn't it an achievement to have a lot of friends? Oh, yeah, you know what, I could see how you could say that, but here he celebrated his greatest achievement with all his friends. It's not telling you that having a lot of friends is an achievement, it's just telling you what you're doing with your friends. So see how understanding that misconception can help me clarify it to my learner. But that's what I'm kind of doing. That's my differentiation piece. Even with Anna, who couldn't see the screen, I can de-escalate with that 50-50. I'm always trying to get her unstuck with that higher order question. So that's kind of what we're doing when we're teaching an EDI lesson, and that's how I can use my gesture when I do that. So think of anyone here, if you have a gesture you'd like to share, and how do gestures help your students learn more and retain more information? Please raise your hand if you have a gesture you'd like to share, because this is important. This is how we learn gestures. We learn them from each other. Okay, so go ahead and talk to each other. What's a good gesture you've used in the classroom, and why, and how? How does it help your students learn more? Any volunteers want to volunteer a gesture? Yeah, Belinda, Haley, Jennifer, Nikki group?
After we observed some of this at another school last year, I sort of gave it a crack, and I teach foundation, and I literally just tried doing addition, and I just talked about we add together or we take away, and the kids really liked it and it worked, and they understood that it was putting two things together when we add, and taking away is taking something away.
It's just, I mean, it's a multiple pathway to the brain. It helps students store information in multiple ways. It's very important, especially, for our kinesthetic learners. They need movement. We need movement. This is just another modality of learning. And so any way we can do it, any type of cognitive brain strategy. Okay. Next, we have pair share and attention signal. Pair share, again, I said it earlier, is one of the most powerful engagement norms that we have. Okay. This is where the collaboration piece. First of all, a pair share, every student answers the question, okay? A's will talk to B's, B's will talk to A's. Every student answers your question. Every student gets to practice their answer. Every student hears an answer and tells an answer, okay? Anxiety is very difficult. Anxiety is very detrimental to a learner. If you have anxiety in the classroom, it's very difficult to retain information. In fact, as adults, I teach adults all the time. I work with teachers all the time. When I ask questions, people get anxious because public speaking causes anxiety. No one wants to sound like they don't know the answer in front of other people. So it's what's known as an affective filter, where a student is so filled with an anxiety, they can't even respond because they can't ever even think. So how do you reduce it? Well, you teach clearly, and you teach first, explicitly, let the students engage in the information, practice their answers, and then they're more confident to answer. Now, first you have to set up your classrooms. This is really important. If you truly want to implement EDI, the way you even set up your classroom is really important. Label your desks. I used to always recommend this to teachers or schools. I'm like, oh, if you'd like, label your desk. Now, I'm kind of I'm more adamant about it. I'm like, look, if you really want to support your students, put a sticker on their desk where one says A and one says B, or one is green dot and one is red dot, or one is a kangaroo and one is a dolphin, one is a shark. Whatever you want to label your students, because that way, whenever they sit down, they know who their pair share partner is. In my classroom, we would have set desks, but throughout the day, all my students are constantly moving and rotating in different groups. So whenever they would sit at a different desk, they could look at the corner and they knew that was an A desk, and they knew the other one was a B desk. So no matter how many times, okay, class, now I'm going to work with this group right here, this group over here, you guys move to that side of the class. Whatever desk you fall on, that's your A, that's your P. Labeling your desk really helps. If you're early childhood, label the carpet. Okay, the teacher I told you about who did the year one, all her carpets had that Velcro, the Velcro dot on the carpet where the students knew where to sit, and they knew if they were A and there was an arrow pointing to the B. So the students knew who to pair share with. and who to talk with. It facilitates that for the students, is just putting that into place. Another really important thing is we identify who talks first. A partners go first. This time, B partners go first. Kangaroo partners go first. This time, koala partners go first. I don't, you can label chips go first, salsa go first, nachos go first, cheese goes first, fish, chips, whatever you want to label them, as long as one goes first this time and the other one. This is important. Strategic pairs. What we mean by strategic pairs is you don't have two low performing students pair sharing together. There's not enough academic discourse and socialization. They're not learning or teaching from themselves. It's usually a low with a middle, so they can have some dialogue, so there can be some traction. It's usually not even a low with a high. Sometimes doesn't work because there's too big of a gap between them. Unless that high student is a nurturing, natural teacher, inherent teacher who likes to teach, then it work. So be strategic how you place your students in pair share partners, and rotate the pairs every now and then. Okay, I would rotate my pairs every few weeks so people knew this was a learning community. Look, in the beginning of the year, I would let them work with their mates just to get comfortable in my classroom. But eventually they had to learn how to work with any type of student because it was a learning community. We're going to learn from everyone. In the beginning, I teach them how to pair share. Once they're sat on their desk, I'd say, look, we pair share for all these reasons. I'll show you in a second. Here are all the reasons, 15 reasons to pair share. I would give my students a lot of these reasons. This is how why we pair share. And as a teacher, here's why we pair share. So 15 reasons to pair share. Everyone read this out loud with me. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Every student orally answers every question. Everyone has to answer the question. In a pair share, A's have to talk and B's have to talk. If there's a group of 3, there's 2 A's and 1 B. Okay? Now, if you have a group of 3, like for example, if you have an odd number of students in your class, if you have 21 students, obviously one group is going to be a group of 3. So you tell them, now make sure you have 3 middle performing students pair sharing together, because a low with 2 middle performing students, that low student will become a passive learner. But you even teach the third student how to pair share. Every student orally answers every question. Number 2, automatic wait time is embedded. Students need think time. A learner needs think time to process an answer. They need to think about it. They need to truly process it, and then they can answer. It's very hard to quick cold call and quick answer. Number 3, read with me. Listening and speaking is included. You hear the answer, so you're listening, and you speak the answer. Very essential skills. Number 4, student engagement improves. Okay, this is vital. I remember, 3 years ago, my 8-year-old was diagnosed with ADHD. He was diagnosed with ADHD, and it's tough. I know it's now diagnosed quite more frequently, and it was tough. It's technically a learning disability. It's classified in the US that way, but there's a lot you can do with it. And so I did a lot of research on ADHD, and what I found out is that I have ADHD. I've always known I've had it, but I've never been clinically diagnosed. I'm 48. 40 years ago, they didn't call it ADHD. They called you the kid who couldn't sit still. They called it the kid who just couldn't sit still and who was always the distraction. I was really smart. I could get answers, but I couldn't sit still and I couldn't sit quietly. I needed movement, and I didn't realize that way. So anyway, when just to sit and listen was torture for me in the classroom. I remember that very vividly, and it's actually very difficult for a lot of students. So I need to be engaged. I need to talk to my colleagues, my classmates. I know one thing, even with teachers, when I'm training them and teaching them, when I'm in an actual workshop, I can feel the energy. If I've talked, I need to get you to pair share, and it reboosts your energy. So that student engagement improves. Students remember more because they hear the answer from the teacher. I've taught them, now A's here to B's. It's the way we get our repetitions and our exposures out. Number 6, it increases the student talk to teacher talk ratio. Very important. We find that in primary schools, teachers talk 60% of the time while students talk 40% of the time. And that's divided by the 20 or 30 students that you have. It's the person who is talking is the person who's learning. That's the person who's processing. We have to increase our student talk ratio in academic dialogue. Number 7, students practice their answers. Really important. That reduces anxiety. It's hard. No one wants it. Here I asked what a prefix was. I can promise you more than 3 people knew what a prefix was, but no one wanted to raise their answer because you were a little bit nervous. But once I got you to pair share and practice your answer, now when I called on you, we're much more confident to answer. Provides language translation time. If you're an English language learner, you need more think time because you hear the question in English, translate it to your native language, think of the answer in your native language, and retranslate it back to English. It takes more time. Number 9, short attention spans address. When you're starting to fatigue, you reboost by getting that engagement, being able to have that dialogue. It provides the first reteach because the A partner is teaching that. In fact, when I start and I train my kids how to pair share, the first question I ever ask them, A partner, turn to B partner, and I want you to tell them, today I'm looking forward to teaching you and learning from you today. B partner, turn to A partner and tell them, today I'm looking forward to teaching you and learning from you today, because this is my learning community. Classroom management improves because students are engaged with the curriculum, they're accessing it, and they feel part of a learning community. 12, instruction is more interactive and interesting for the students. It's difficult to just sit in your desk and try to pay attention, especially nowadays with social media, with all the internet, with video games. Students' attention it's going down because they're so used to being bombarded with information. I'll tell you what, it's difficult for adults to pay attention more. You know, how many times have someone wanted to check their phone or something like that? Amelia, as you check your phone. But you know, it's hard not to be distracted. So we have to make instruction more interactive and interesting for the students. Number 13, it allows for academic socialization. This is when they can discuss and learn that academic vocabulary. Number 14, instructional aids can be utilized. If you have that luxury in your classroom, have your instructional aid be the pair share partner. And this is my favorite one. It's really important to me. Reduces affective filter. Affective filter. An affective filter is when your learner is so filled with anxiety, he or she cannot respond. They cannot retain information. I don't want my children, my students, to be stressed or anxious. I want them to learn, and I want to reduce their anxiety by them practicing their answer, by then hearing the answer from others. That reduces their anxiety so they can answer confidently. On your whiteboards, I want you to write one of these reasons to pair share, or 2. Just write the number, either 1 through 15. Just write the number either 1, 12, whatever you choose, and be able to explain how that sentence, how pair share addresses the sentence you chose. Three, 2, 1, show me your whiteboards. Let's see your whiteboards. All right, let's see. Let's do how about that? Pete, why did you choose 3? Go ahead, the Kelly, DJ, Liz. Pete, corner.
Saying, Pete?
I chose 3 because I think it's important that kids are still getting that opportunity to use the oral language.
Of course, but you know, speaking and listening is extremely important skill. You know, it's what we need to do every day, you know, and how to be good listeners and how to be good speakers. It's just another benefit of pair sharing. Let's see. While I have that group unmuted, can I see your whiteboards over there? Can you put them? Oh, who put fifth? Is that 13? Can you show me for 13? Why you chose 13 on there? I can't see you in the yellow.
Deirdre?
Deirdre.
Yeah.
Allows for academic socialisation. I think
Yep.
it's good they're not listening the whole time and that they do get that opportunity to talk to classmates and to students that may not be their friends.
Especially academically. Look, most students, even English only students, will get conversational English. We have to be very we have to expose them to academic vocabulary, especially content specific vocabulary, like in math, numeracy, or in the sciences. You know, unit fraction is not conversational English. So if we're teaching unit fraction, they have to use that language in their pair sharing to develop that type of vocabulary. Really important to develop vocabulary, especially academic vocabulary for your learners. Okay, any questions on pair share? Anyone like to share a question? No? Okay. All right. Pair sharing. Set up your classrooms to facilitate pair sharing. Explain to your students why we pair share. And then lastly, you have an attention signal to return your students from pair share. This is pretty, I mean, every teacher always has one or two up their sleeve. When I say eyes front, students back straight. When I say 1, 2, 3, students eyes on me. What is it? Waterfall, or what is it? Waterfall, I forget. I'm a little rusty with some of my attention signal. I always used to use sports teams. I would use Los Angeles, my students say Lakers, and every day I would randomly pick a student and I'd let them use their team. What team do you want to use? Okay, Golden State Warriors. All right, San Francisco Giants. They could use whatever. So one day, the whole day, someone chose Justin. And what do you think the response was? Justin? Anyone? Bieber back then. Now I'm sure it might be Timberlake. I don't know. But anyway, whatever they wanted to use, because the pair share, the attention signal was to return the students from a pair share. Be careful. You have an attention signal to return from a pair share, and then you have an attention signal for classroom management. There's a subtle difference. Okay, classroom management, I had my attention signal was, and my students would go, because I wanted to make sure, okay, that meant that was a signal to my class that they were a little bit off task. Okay, I don't want to use my Los Angeles Lakers to get them back behaviorally, because that was for pair share, because I don't want to overuse that signal. Because I remember one teacher's attention signal was eyes front, back straight. Well, she'd lost control of her classroom. So the class is out of control and she's just running eyes front, eyes front, eyes front, please, eyes front. She'd lost the power of that attention signal. So she needed a different strategy in place there. Okay. So pair share, why it's very valuable to do. The next one, whiteboards. All right. Whiteboards are for short answers, okay? Green dot is for early childhood foundation because they don't have motor skills to write their answers. So that means yes, red dot no. For first and second graders, I actually have yes or no. Now for older kids, I have A, B, or C, short answers that they'll justify their answer and their thinking. The key is to justify. How many teachers out there use whiteboards? Whiteboards are nothing new now. How many teachers use whiteboards? Okay, fair enough. The key to how you use whiteboards in EDI is the justification piece. Okay, I don't have them justify every time I use whiteboards, but if I want true understanding, they have to tell me why they chose A. Okay, and I'll give you an example when I teach a lesson in a second. The reason they justify is because they give you true understanding of why they chose the answer. That's that higher order questioning component. Now, who uses whiteboards in a classroom? Everyone? If you've used whiteboards in a classroom, have you ever seen a student look at someone else's whiteboard? Has anyone ever seen that? You have? No, that's impossible. I can't believe that would ever happen. No, other students looked at other students' whiteboard. Actually, it's literally impossible not to look at another whiteboard. It's impossible for humans not to look at it. We have, everyone do this, We have amazing peripheral vision. Okay, it's a survival mechanism. So anytime we see movement peripherally, we're drawn to it. So we're going to turn to it no matter what. So if we see this on the side, we're almost automatically look. So sometimes we do it unintentionally. Okay, another reason we do it is because we're unsure of the answer. Okay, so that's why I explain to the students, look, class, whiteboards are for me as your teacher. You're giving me information. It's okay to be incorrect. I'm not grading you. You're telling me if you understand this concept or not. Now, if too many of you don't have the correct answer, then I know that I have to reteach the whole class with a different example. Now, if only a few of you have the incorrect answer, that's okay too. I don't want you to worry about that. That's part of the learning process. If a few of you have the incorrect answer, I'm not going to call on you first. I'm going to call on other students, and I'm hoping you, with the incorrect answer, will listen to different answers, and maybe you can correct your own thinking. That's why I have other students justify their thinking, and I echo it, so maybe those other students can self-correct. So I explain to them that's why we use it. And if a student still keeps on looking at other answers, if they keep doing that, who do you think I call first to justify their answer? I'll call that student. I'm like, okay, Courtney, I see that can you tell me why you chose A? And usually that student's like, oh, I don't know. Well, here's why it's really important to tell me if you understand it or not. So I want you to listen to a couple answers and then I'll come back to you. Okay, have that student who keeps looking at the answers to justify their thinking and explain to them, this isn't a grade, it's not a test, it's just giving me information. Okay, I used to like the hard copy whiteboards. Now I'm much more of a prefer ones with inserts. Whoops, I don't see if you can see that. So it's a plastic like this, and then I insert a harder copy of paper. Okay, so we insert this, and you can put in graphing paper, you can put in number lines, you can put in maps, you can put in all kinds of things, Venn diagrams, all kinds of things that you're using, anything like that. I found that that's really beneficial. Let me see, I'm sorry about that. Here you can't see it, but there's lines where the students can practice their cursive or their print. Remember, don't have your students write too long of answers on the whiteboards because it's going to take the pace of your lesson away. If you're asking them to write too much, it'll take too long. You might as well have them write on paper. You won't be able to see their answers if they have a huge writing on that. Once in a while for closure, I let them do that. So think about it. It's how we check for understanding in real time, whiteboards. And now, lastly, on this workshop, just so you know, every time I show whiteboards, my next page is how to use whiteboards. It'll tell you ask a question, have your students write a short answer, they can pair share, they read and justify. This will give you prompts when you look back and you want to look at it more in depth. And then our last engagement norm is complete sentences. All right, complete sentences. This is one of the easiest engagement norms to implement with one of the biggest bang for your bucks that you get right away. Okay, what do we ask our students to write in? Full sentences, complete sentences. Okay, so if we want them to write in complete sentences or full sentences, they need to talk in complete sentences first. Now, the key is the academic vocabulary. Complete sentences, we always want them to use the academic vocabulary that they're learning in the lesson, okay? Which is the answer, how do you know, is a complete sentence? That's a great question. But the way you support your students to use the academic vocabulary, you model the language you want the students to answer with in your question. If I'm teaching context clues, which is an example of a context clue, how do you know? Because your students will eventually learn the example of a context clue is. Which is an example of a unit fraction, how do you know? Okay. Describe what a character does. How did you identify the character? I identified the character because the way you pose that question to your students will help them use those words and rephrase them into their complete sentence. Okay. So really important on developing language and vocabulary using those complete sentences. All right. Now, let's look at a lesson. Okay, you're going to see 7 components of an EDI lesson. This is kind of what the pace of a lesson looks like. Everyone is a year 3 student right now. This is from learning objectives to skill development and guided practice. Okay, class. I'm going to read the learning objective first, but first I want to pronounce this word. Fraction. Your turn. Fraction. Again, fraction. These 2 words together, unit fraction. Pronounce that. Unit fraction. All right, I'm going to read the learning objective. Track with me. We will determine or figure out the unit fraction of a whole. Read with me. We will determine the unit fraction of a whole. A partner, read to B partner. What are we doing today? Can you read to your partner? B partner, read to A partner. What are we doing today? Who can read to me what we're doing today? Square 1, can I have the Karen, John, Anna square read to me what we're doing today?
1, 2, 3.
We will determine the unit fraction of a whole.
And then I'd call another box, and now I could ask for volunteers. Would any volunteers like to read for me what they're doing to me, what we're doing today? Okay. The learning objective is scripted. It's scripted for efficiency. Teacher read 1, students read 2, A's to B's, B's to A's, 2 random non-volunteers, then a couple volunteers. In 30 seconds to a minute, the students have rehearsed the academic and content vocabulary they're going to be reading throughout the lesson. It's done for efficiency. It's how you get information from sensory memory into working memory. Now, because I spent enough time on that, now I've got to think about activating prior knowledge. I'm not teaching anything new. I'm just refreshing students that I'm just showing students that they know how to do this already. We're going to solve the problems below. Everyone on your whiteboard, draw a circle that represents a pie. How you would split a whole pie into 2 equal parts so that 2 people get the same amount. Let's say I had a whole pie and I wanted to split it with my mate evenly. I'd have to split this into 2 equal parts. I have to just put a line through the middle. Now I have 1 equal part and another equal part. I just split this into 2 equal parts. Let's look at number 2. I did the first one. That's skill development. Students do the second one. This is, remember the curve of forgetting? They might know how to do this, but I'm refreshing their memory. Students, how you would split a whole pie into 4 equal parts so 4 people get the same amount. On your whiteboard, show me a pie that's split into 4 equal parts. Be ready to explain why it's 4 equal parts. Show me your whiteboards. Whiteboards up. Okay. Jess, Barb, and Kelly, why is that pie in 4 equal parts? Jess, Barb, and Kelly. Yeah.
Was your question why is it?
Yeah, you're just trying to get dialogue. Even here, you're teaching your students how to justify. The more I have them to justify, How did you split your whole pie into 4 equal parts? Can you tell me?
I drew a line down the middle and a line
Okay.
up and a line across the middle, and now I have 4 pieces and they're all the same size.
Beautiful. Does everyone see how that's now? Are all those parts equal? Yes. So
Well,
everyone would have a fair share. So students, sometimes we have to split a whole into equal parts. When we do that, we call each part a unit fraction. Okay? Learning objective and activating prior knowledge should take no more than 3 minutes. Okay, why? Because my primacy recency effect. I need to get to the new information at the 3-minute mark. This is the new concept. Now, here's how I teach concept development. Everyone, please do this. It's a definition, academic definition, an example, and then a higher order question. That's usually the pattern that I'm doing when I do this. Okay. Okay. Do one line at a time. If you see our EduSary lessons, these are not scripted lessons. They're actually just a framework. They're a jumping off point for you. They're a skeleton of information that you add the meat to. You only do one definition at a time, and then you then you contextualize it. For example, if I did this, a unit fraction represents 1 equal part of a whole. The numerator is always 1. The denominator is the number of total equal parts. This is a unit fraction. Unit fraction. If I did that all at once, it would be confusing to my learner. So I do one definition at a time. So look how I do this. Track with me, class. A unit fraction represents 1 equal part of a whole. Read with me. A unit fraction represents 1 equal part of a whole. Definition, everyone, definition. What do I have to do? An example. Let's look over here. I have a circle, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 equal parts. One of these parts is a unit fraction because that is 1 equal part of a whole. That's what a unit fraction is. Look over here, not divided into equal parts. Let's count the parts. 1, 2, 3, 4. That is not a unit fraction because these are not equal parts. If this was a pie and I got this piece of the pie and I gave you this piece of the pie, would that be equal? Would that be fair? No, that's why it's not a unit fraction. These are not equal parts. So what did I do? Definition, examples. Now what do I have to do? I have to ask a question. Which figure below shows a unit fraction? Explain. Is it figure A or is it figure B? On your whiteboard, show me either A, it's the figure that below that shows a unit fraction, or is it B? Okay. Very nice. Courtney, Mel, Denise, Amelia. Can 2 of you show me B and can 1 of you show me A? One of you have A on there? Okay. Volunteer. So I can't see very well, but I'm thinking I have, okay, 2 B's and 1 A. Okay. Yeah. So I start with my middle. Oh, it's yellow. I can't see yellow very well. I start with the middle. Okay. Why did you choose B? Why is that a figure of a unit fraction? When you answer, say it's a unit fraction because, if I ask my first person with B, it'd be a middle performing. Go ahead.
It's a unit fraction because all 3 parts are equal.
Yes, echo, because all 3 parts are equal. Then I'd go to the other student with a B. I saw that you put B, that's a figure that represents a unit fraction. Why is it not A? Why could A not be a figure that shows a unit fraction?
Because they're not equal.
It's not a unit fraction because these pieces are not equal. Then I go to my A. Would you like to explain to me? Would you like to change your answer and would you tell me why? I'm sorry. I already asked you to change your answer earlier. I wouldn't do that twice in the same day, by the way. So, okay. That's kind of the pattern. Now I'd go to here. The numerator is always 1. U for up. Okay, so now I'm doing 1. The unit fraction, because 1, it represents one of the equal parts, and now I have my higher order question. I have to get going a little quickly. Which one is a unit fraction? How do you know? Okay, they would show B. This is concept development. And very quickly to finish off, now I would show skill development guided practice. We always in math have them paired because we do the first one. Let's read the problem, class. Number 1. What is the unit fraction of the circle? Let's determine the unit fraction. First of all, let's count the equal parts. Count with me. 1, 2, 3. I have 3 equal parts. I know the parts are the denominator, so I put 3 on the bottom. Now, in a unit fraction, it's easy. The numerator is always 1 because it's one part of the 3. So one of these is my unit fraction. I'm going to interpret the unit fraction. The unit fraction 1/3 represents one part of 3 equal parts. That's how I did number 1. Now the key in EDI is now you ask your students how you, the teacher, modeled that. So class, talk to your partner. How did I know for number 1, 1/3 or 1/3 was the unit fraction of that circle? How did I know that? How did I know the numerator was 1? How did I know the denominator was 3? Talk to each other. If your students can articulate your thought process, your teacher think aloud, if they can explain how you solve the problem, they're going to be able to apply that to their own problem solving. That's why it's important to check for understanding how did I do that, class? Oh, you did that because you knew there were 3 equal parts. That's your denominator. It represents the equal parts. And then a unit fraction is always 1 in the numerator. Great, class. Now you do number 2 with your partners. What is the unit fraction of the circle? Go ahead, show me on your whiteboards. Talk to your partners and be ready to show me on your whiteboards. Then I'd ask for the answer. How did you choose? Why did you choose 1/2 or 1/2? Blah, blah, blah. Justify your answer. Then, after I showed a couple examples, I always do an informal closure. Class, what did you learn today about a unit fraction? What is a unit fraction? Talk to your partners. What is a unit fraction? You put a unit fraction in your own words. I'd call on a couple students and we can see this is my primacy, recency, prime time 1, prime time 2, where I'm ending with an informal closure. That's what an EDI lesson looks like. It's the initial teaching to get my students to have an understanding of the concept I'm trying to get across.
Joe, just on behalf of the Wood End staff, we'd really like to thank you for today.
Oh, my pleasure.
It became really clear, particularly in the first session, the explanation about EDI, the reason why schools are training in EDI, and the research, the links to the brain is really, really important. So that was really interesting to set the foundations to why we are on this EDI path. And I think for us going away now, we'll really embrace those engagement norms and unpack those and get stronger at knowing how to use them with our students.